I personally believe within 5 years, there will be no Taiwan issue. We'll resolve that. Nobody can stop China. In the past 3 days, you may know in Singapore, there is a so-called Shangri-La Forum. And many people noticed the first day of this year's forum in the May 31st, the two ministers, defense ministers, met together, right? One is Defense Minister Austin from US, and another is Dong Jun, Mr. Dong Jun from China. I think the media pay a lot of attention to this high-ranking meeting. And many people noticed during the dialogue between these two defense ministers, Taiwan issue is a very hot issue, very prominent issue. Mr. Dong Jun from Chinese side made it very clear Taiwan is the real red line of China. Taiwan separatists and some people from outside the world, if they want to play the card of Taiwan, they got counterback from China. In recent months, people who pay attention to Taiwan issue should notice that this issue become hot again. And the very important reason is that Mr. Lai Ching-te, he delivered inaugural speech, right, in May 20th. In that speech, his position is very provocative to mainland China. He stressed on his point is that Taiwan and mainland China separated. Taiwan is a sovereignty. That's go beyond the bottom line of Beijing. That provocative gesture made Beijing very angry. You see some measure taken by Beijing. One is military exercise surrounding Taiwan. Another is some economic punishment and medium critics. And under this background, Lai Ching did not step back. He's still very tough. And behind him, some US politicians give him a support. So that makes the situation around Taiwan really dangerous. As you may know, Taiwan is part of China and it traces back to many years ago. If you're interested in Chinese culture, you should know the story of three kingdoms. Right? In Chinese, we call it the 三国演义, the game of three kingdoms. And one of the kingdoms is so-called Dongwu. And the leader of Dongwu, called Sun Quan, at that time, he sent his general ship to Taiwan and claimed the sovereignty of Taiwan. So this claim of sovereignty can trace back to nearly 2,000 years ago. But in modern history, because Qing dynasty defeated by Japan Empire in 1894, so-called Jiawu 战争, the war occurred in Jiawu year. So Taiwan separated 50 years to Japan Empire. But after the end of Second World War, Taiwan back to China. The later time of the Second World War, there is a so-called Cairo Declaration signed by three leaders of the world at that time. One is Franklin Roosevelt, the President of the United States, and Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and Mr. Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the Republic of China at that time. According to Declaration of Cairo, the Cairo Declaration, the Japan Empire must retain all the territory they seized from China. So that's the very important document with international law impacts. And 2 years later, in the famous Boston Protocol, fully 100% accept the stance of Cairo Declaration. That means the Boston Protocol ordered or required the Japanese Empire to retain all the territory, including Taiwan, back to China. And as you may know, in the August 15th, 1945, the Emperor of Japan Empire at that time, they fully accept the requirements of Boston Protocol, right? So from the perspective of international law, Taiwan back to China in 1945. Later on, Taiwan separated with mainland China, not because the invasion of other country, not because of the impact of international law, but because civil war. You may know, between 1946 to 1949, in China, we have a very tragic situation. At that time, the two major parties, one is the Communist Party of China, one is Nationalist Party of China. They fight each other. We fell into a civil war. And the result of this civil war is that Kuomintang, the so-called Nationalist Party of China, they fled to Taiwan. Then leads to the separation of Taiwan with mainland China until today, right? So basically speaking, now Taiwan and mainland China separated for a while because civil war is a result of civil war. And both sides, during when Kuomintang ran in Taiwan, both sides declared they represented the whole China. But in recent years, when DPP, Democratic Progressive Party of Taiwan, came into power, they changed the attitude. They changed their political position. They tend to legally separate Taiwan from whole China. That's something not acceptable from Beijing's perspective. So that's why in recent years, the relations across Taiwan Strait become very unstable. But up to date, the leaders in Beijing, their position looks like this. China will be unified, but Beijing side put peaceful unification on the very top. Although mainland China owns obvious military advantage, Beijing now owns a choice of use of force to unify China. But up to date, the leaders in Beijing still put peaceful unification on the very top, right? So that's the main reason why although the cross-Taiwan Strait relations has problem, but the situation around the Taiwan is still quite peaceful. But with very recent political change in Taipei, Lai Ching-te, who publicly claimed he's a Taiwan separatist. With Lai Ching-te, this Taiwan separatists came into power. Then the situation now facing some danger. And makes things worse is that although Taiwan issue basically is an internal issue of China, because as I mentioned, it's a result of a civil war. But at the very beginning, the United States involved in China's civil war. You know, during the civil war between 1946 to 1949, U.S. backed Kuomintang, backed the Nationalist Party of China, right? So to some extent, the U.S. involved China's civil war. And after Kuomintang fled to Taiwan, the U.S. gave full support to Taiwan, including military support. So that makes the situation very complicated. Legally speaking, Taiwan issue is an issue of Chinese internal affairs. But because this historical reason, the U.S. is a party involved in this game. And on U.S. side, I think the quite high percentage of U.S. strategy want to play the card of Taiwan against mainland China. Although the U.S. side still promised to so-called one China policy. And, they give the cheap lip service every day. They said we were loyal to one China policy, but their behavior betrayed their promise. Their behavior is to encourage Taiwan to separate. So that makes the leaders in Beijing in a very awkward situation. As I mentioned, Beijing determined to unify the whole China. That's a promise to the whole nation. On any circumstances, Beijing will not give up this stance. We will unify the whole China. Now the new situation in Taiwan in U.S. forced Beijing authority to give more serious consideration of a non-peaceful unification. So that makes the situation looks much more dangerous than before. As all know, this year, 2024, is the general election year of the United States, right? And compared to previous election, this year the partisan politics is really get worse, right? Democrats, Biden side, they legally sued the former president Donald Trump, and put Trump in a very dangerous situation. On the other side, the Republican side, quite a lot, the Republican supporters become more and more enthusiastic to support Donald Trump. So the split of partisan politics really get worse. Whether this election can end in a peaceful way, we don't know. As for the result, from Chinese perspective, there is no substantial differences between the two candidates. As for Taiwan, I think no substantial differences. Both of them will play the card of Taiwan.